Okay, will do. Um, we've been doing this second season of Storytellers this year, and I'm really, really pleased that Skylar agreed to join us. And Nat is going to be putting some of your incredible artwork in the comments for everybody to have a look at. And I suppose it'd be great to start with the art. And what made you start painting, Skylar?
Well, I was 35 years old and honestly was suffering with deep, deep depression and not functioning very well with it. And a friend of mine gave me a set of oil paints for Christmas. And I thought, well, why don't I try and focus on something other than my brain for a while? And I went to an after school program that taught, just basic painting stuff. But the lady pissed me off because she painted on my painting without asking permission to touch it with her brush. And so I quit that. And I watched Bob Ross on TV. I love that dude, him and his squirrel in his pocket and all that stuff. And I painted a Bob Ross and I thought, dude, this is fun. This is really fun. I was walking past a gallery and there was a sign in the window that said studio, like art classes or something. So I walked in. It was an old dude and he taught all kinds of different medium. He taught watercolors, oils, acrylics, drawing, just all kinds of stuff. And I asked him to teach me oils and he said, well, what do you know? And I said, let's go like from I know nothing to teach me everything you know. And that old man, over about a year period, meeting with him twice a week, taught me so much. My favorite was what he called engrisage, and it was painting in shades of gray and then putting layers of transparent color on top of that to make it a colored painting. And I just fell in love with that. And so I started doing that. Turned out I like to paint big. And so I painted big, like 3.5, 4-foot paintings, 5-foot paintings. I don't even know why, but it sang to my soul. The other thing I did was I was sitting in the back of a friend of mine's store and would paint there because it was either that or back then they did have asylums where you could be committed. And it was either that or be committed for my own safety at that point. And I stepped back there and I just copied Renoir. I fell in love with Renoir. If you haven't ever looked at Renoir's work, it's Renior, I believe. The dude was quoted as saying, there is enough ugliness in this world. I will never add to it. And he never did. He never did. All of his work is just magnificently gorgeous. So anyway, I enjoyed doing that enough to where I figured, well, why don't I try and sell some of this stuff? And I also went to a community college for a couple of years. I was going to go for 4, but then I changed my mind and decided to sell everything I owned and moved into an RV and started painting portraits and selling artwork at galleries instead. Kind of glad I did. I think it might have ruined me if I'd gone for the other 2 years. The first 2 years are spent basically on basics, composition and stuff like that. After that, then they try and, I don't know, from what I've seen from other artists, a lot of the 4-year institutions just kind of try and tilt you toward a certain direction in your art. And, people will think it's funny when they look at my art, but I'll be honest, I never felt like a real artist for a very long time because I literally paint what I see. Realism. One thing Gene told me, that was an old dude, one thing he told me was paint what you see, not what you know is there. And I don't know if there's a portrait that I painted of a couple of people, and it was one of my favorite portraits, even though it was such a sad painting. I stopped doing portraits because it turned out that most of the people asking for them, the person they wanted painted had died. And, and I feel very deeply people's pain. I'm very empathetic. I feel other people's pain. And so that became a very painful process. And I just kind of stopped doing portraits after that altogether. But art was a lifeline. It was literally my lifeline. And it's always been that way with singing. At one point, my dad was trying to save my life, and he said, "Can you think of one thing that will keep you here?" And I said, "Singing." And I ended up joining a couple of bands, and sang for a few years. It's a lot of weird things, people. With the art, anyone that is even slightly interested in art, a lot of people say they can't do art. And one of the things that old man said was that nobody was born with a paintbrush in your hand. In other words, it's not some nebulous talent. A lot of it's, do you love it enough to do it every day? Anything that you do every day, you will get good at it eventually. Now, yeah, I guess there probably is some talent like Hazel Moon with her reading and audiobooks. That's, to me, talent. But you have to love it enough to want to do it. I've tried a lot of mediums. If somebody tries to paint with oils and can't, try something else. I tried pastels and really stunk at it. And so I went back to painting. Well, just recently I got some more pastels. So I am going to give it my best shot again, because I feel like I can do that. You know, I feel like I had a teacher that said she was firmly convinced I can do anything. But I don't think that's just me. I think I'm firmly convinced that any of us, if we put our mind to it and put our soul to it, we can pretty much do anything. I will say that one of the hardest series I painted was called Inconceivable. It was probably the last one that I painted, actually. And it was abused women. And it was actual abused women. I bought the rights from a photo website to use their faces. And they were huge. The verticals were like 5 feet something tall, 4 feet wide. They were massive. Painted half of them in a wheelchair. I was in a car accident. I volunteered. I used to teach kids how to paint at school. And I was on my way home from school and had a car wreck. Anyway, where do we go from here? Give me some guidance. I don't want to bore people to death, and I'm frankly slightly nervous. Is there anything you really, really, really want to hear about? We were gonna.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not sure what's going on.
Sorry, that was me. I was thinking about what you were saying about how painting sang to your soul. And I know you're a very spiritual woman. How did the art and your spirituality kind of weave together?
Ooh. Well, I almost don't know how to describe it. When I would pick up a brush and a canvas, and, you know, a lot of people will look at a blank canvas and they get terrified by it. The best way to get rid of that is put something on the canvas. And so that's what I would do. I would take the biggest brush that I could work with on the size canvas and just start blocking in everything. But the minute I picked up that brush and I listen to music when I'm painting, and it varies. To me, music is energy. And so it really depends on where I'm at, what I listen to. When I was painting a portrait of my dad, I listened to Yanni and Enya all day long. A lot of you will probably laugh at me for that, but I actually love Yanni and Enya both. Their music is ethereal. And what would happen is I'd start painting, and the next thing I knew, 2 hours had gone by, and I was looking at a face. And I would, and there's a saying that when you paint, you're supposed to paint from across the room. So what that means is that you'll work on your painting, and then you'll take your reference, if you're using one, walk across the room with your back to it, turn around, look at your reference, and then look at your painting from across the room. And you can see where you need corrections, where you need more color work, where you need better composition, whatever. And I remember the very first portrait I ever painted was a model in a magazine, and it was just to learn how to paint portraits, basically. And I walked across the room and turned around and I said, "Who did that? Holy shit, who did that?" It was like almost a complete disconnect because it looked exactly like that woman. And I was like, holy cow. And so I felt like there was a lot more than just me painting when I pick up a brush or when I draw or when I do any artwork. It's more like I'm channeling the energy of the universe instead. It's not just me. And what a treat that is to co-create with our creatrix. Or if you believe in a creator, I believe in a creatrix. But anyway, God has been a huge part of my life. It was funny. I was talking to my sister today. She was trying to help me get ready for this thing. I told her, I said, well, I'll probably tell them the story about when we were kids. The first time I remember even actually having a conversation with God was when our parents were out trying to stop some horses from fighting during a thunderstorm. And my sister and we were in grade school, and we were terrified by both the storm and the fact that our parents were out there trying to stop these horses from killing each other. And she sat down with a Bible and opened it up to Psalms and started reading. I've been through a lot of different religions. I will still say that Psalms, to me, is one of the best books for communicating with a higher power because it covers the gambit of everything that you can experience in this life. The joy, the ecstasy of basically feeling the presence of a spiritual being, the agony of what this world puts us through, the anger. Oh my gosh. Reading about the Epstein files recently brought it back to my mind. I fell down that rabbit hole years ago, and it was devastating then as it is now. And on X, somebody says, well, do you still believe in God? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I'm kind of pissed at the moment, but that doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. But one of the Psalms was talking about, don't be envious of basically the jerks out there that are getting away with all the crap because, they're not going to get away with it forever. Everything comes around. I'm a firm believer in karma. I really am. Another FAFO, basically. What you put out there, you tend to get back. When I was young, I was taught to be very violent. I learned to box when I was 6 years old, and I learned to box extremely well. If they had had professional boxing when I was young, I might have even done MMA. I could have been the next Ronda Rousey, I loved it. I loved boxing. I was really good at it. But the problem with that was I was also, and still am obviously, autistic. I didn't know how to talk to people. So I was in the third grade, some sixth grader walked up and called me bucktooth, and I just decked him. And then I found out a day later that my sister liked him and she was pissed off. And I'm like, well, don't hang out with the idiots that are going to go up to a kid 3 years younger than them and call them buck teeth if you don't want somebody to deck them. But anyway, so I was real violent as a youth. And as a teenager, that was exacerbated. I was homeless for a while, ran away from home, and lived on the streets. And that gets ugly in a hurry. I love the fact, if somebody tells you that people can't change, they're a liar. Because as a teenager, I was a crook. I was a dealer. You couldn't trust a word out of my mouth. I'll be the first to say it. But in my early 20s, about 20, yeah, up in there, I decided I didn't like who I was. I didn't respect who I was. And I didn't want to be that. So I stopped. And I became so entrenched in integrity and honor from that point forward that nothing could stomp it. That's one of the reasons I got out there for the activism. You know, you do what's right. Say what's right, whether it hurts. Speak the truth, whether it hurts, and whether people threaten you with death and rape. Speak the truth anyway. You know, I changed completely over the years. When I was a teenager, I became a Rastafarian. I can tell you categorically that God will come to you where you are. And God, the three-letter word basically, doesn't care what you call it. Because I started out calling it Jah, changed to Father when I was in church, but they ignore the mother, so now I pray to the mother. My sister gets pissed off at that, and I'm saying, like, well, you can't have a son without a mother and a father. Every other pantheon in the world knows this. So I pray to the mother, and I used to do a bunch of goddess studies, but what I felt like was that all of the different goddesses were different facets of the one diamond that is my goddess. And so I just call her Mama because that's the relationship that we have. And as a teen, I was a drug dealer and I was taking a 10-pound deal. I was forced to do this. I didn't want to. I didn't know the people that we were dealing with, never been there, neither did the man I was delivering for. I was scared to death. I had been doing what we called back then MDA. They may call it MDMA now. I don't know. Anyway, it was a drug that really messes with your control. And I get there and I walk up this really dark stairwell. I mean, dark. I get to the top and the door is opened by a 6'5" dude with gold tooth and dreadlocks. And I thought to myself, I'm going to die. I'm going to die here today. You know, because I didn't know these people and I had 10 pounds of marijuana. That's enough to get killed for. But we go in the kitchen and we do the deal, and I'm just walking out the door and I'm grabbing hold of the doorknob. Big 6 foot tall, deep voice, I want to talk to you, and points down the dark hallway. And I'm like, oh, frick, I'm going to die. We walk down the hallway and I sit down and he says, you're terrified. Why? I just looked at him and said, well, I figure you're going to rape and kill me, dude. You know, I want to talk to you about God. And I'm like, wait, what? And so he starts talking about being Rastafarian and the reason I smoke so much weed, which I did smoke so much weed back then, probably an ounce a day. I'm not kidding. And I thought, wow, so that's why I smoke so much weed. I'm trying to get closer to God. And so I became a Rastafarian, fell right into that. I will tell you that almost every religion that I have ever encountered has a piece of truth. Pieces of truth. Some have more than others. But what happens is when you get drawn into these things, which Rastafarianism to me, I look back and I realize it's a cult, but they had pieces of truth. And the pieces of truth that they had, I glommed onto. So then years later, after I had walked away from being a Rasta, I came across a Bible, NIV Bible, and I started reading Psalms. They read Psalms a lot in Rastahood. I'll tell you that. They read them every day. But you can't trust them. But anyway, so I started reading
Let's
them.
talk. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to get into the meat with you here about, like, let's talk about your art a little bit
Go back to
because I've
art.
been dying to talk to you about your art.
What would you
Uh,
specifically like to talk about?
I want to talk about your floral prints because they speak to me on so many levels as a woman, as a lover of nature, as someone who looks for the divine in the ordinary, out in the silence. What got you into, I want to do these giant, I know you like the large paintings, but what
I know, but aren't they
pivoted you
great?
to that?
Um,
They're amazing. So, but what pivoted you to the the huge flowers?
oh, that was so simple. It was the dude, Gene, the guy that taught me pretty much everything I knew. He ran the Orchid Society down in Jacksonville, Florida. And so basically, a lot of the people in those classes were in the Orchid Society. Turns out they all had orchid greenhouses. So I took a camera to the orchid greenhouses and took a bunch of photos of these orchids. And I thought to myself, you know what? This could be really fun. And what I found was you can play with the underpainting a lot. I didn't just do black and white underpaintings. I did brown and white, like burnt sienna and white, or burnt umber and white, depending on what I was working towards as an end goal. And honestly, I would just walk up to a canvas and block in that big flower, just block. I mean, it was just messy. And then little by little, tighten it a little as you go. Tighten it up until it looked like you could walk across the room and put your arm down in it. You know, it was that realistic. And the layers of color, I don't know if you've ever tried to paint that way, but if you do, it's kind of a trip. Because when you first start out, if you've ever seen old colored photographs that have almost lost all their color, that's what it looks like. These thin, transparent layers, they have to build up. You have to do like 20 layers of color minimum. And so the first, I don't know, 3 to 5 layers, they just look like a washed out photograph. And you have to be very conscious of how light or dark something is going to be when you're done with it. If it's going to be a very light flower, you have to be really careful how much pigment that you put on there. I used liquid because it would dry overnight. Oil paintings are, you know, known for not drying for like 6 months. Liquid is an alkyd medium that I would mix in. And yeah, you could put a layer on every day doing that. But when you get to the point where the color starts to pop is when it starts to get exciting. I once painted a whole mural on a guy's wall, and all he wanted was a lot of color. And it started out black and white. And he was like, there is going to be color, right? And by the time it was done, it looked like you could walk down his hallway and up into his wall because the mural was so lifelike. It was just the neatest way of painting. I also liked Impressionism. That's a lot of fun, and it's real freeing. It's real loose. You're not trying to get exact details. You're trying to get the feel of the thing, the impression. You know, Impressionism was named after Monet's painting Impression Sunrise. And originally it was supposed to be I don't know, a cut down, you know, a derogatory, because it wasn't realistic. And they started having their own shows because they couldn't get into the big shows. And then it took off. What else you want to know? Talk to me. Give me some direction.
I want to go back a little bit to what you said about the compulsion, like to create. And I know for me that, you know, and you and I had both had things in our past, and I think the compulsion for, like, for me especially, is the time I feel most open to feeling all feelings and letting down my guards with myself. And I think a lot of people don't know how hard it is with internally to let down your guards when you're creating. And it's like the compulsion for me in a way is part of that, chasing that ability to be free. I mean, it's the one place I feel like I'm free is when I'm creating. When you're creating, when you're painting, I have two questions. One, what is your first favorite medium? And two, when you are creating, do you tap into those emotions based on what you're thinking about? For me, I don't ever I don't know what I'm going to paint until I start. Do you plan it out, or so I know this is multiple questions in one, because I'm an artist and that's what I do. I want to know.
I
I want
love
to
this.
get inside your head in a way about that. And like, for you, what is the compulsion with creating?
Ooh. Um, Wow. There was a lot of questions in there.
I know, I know. I apologize. I
Well,
just
I
got,
do.
I got
Okay.
excited.
I'll try and take it piecemeal, and no, I love it. I do plan them out ahead of time to a degree because composition is pretty important. How to pull people into the work, how to make people's eyes move around the work where you would like them to see. Even though like my florals, those big florals, you'll notice the backgrounds on them are real out of focus. You know, that's to make the flower themselves just pop off the canvas. I did a lot with composition. Now I've been trying to change it up because I can't see as well anymore. So now I'm kind of going the route of Monet a little bit because he lost his sight when he got older too. That's disturbing, I'll tell you that. But oils were my absolute favorite medium of all time. I say were because they affect me physically now, so I had to switch to acrylic. But it is capable to use extender and get acrylics to act more like oils if you want to. Oils I felt like had such pure tone, such pure color. The pigments are just so vibrant. And I was very picky. Even as a student, I didn't buy student grade paint because student grade paint is filled with fixatives and other things and additives, and they lose their color very quickly. So I sprung, man. I would save up for months and spring for the good stuff. In any art that you do, like a friend of mine just gave me a set of Faber-Castell, or however you pronounce them, pastel pencils that were $100, which for us is a lot of money. And they did that because they know that if you don't have the good materials, it's harder to do good work. I haven't done a lot of paintings where you don't know what you're painting before you start. The only time I really did that, I was playing with Sumi paint, Sumi ink, whatever. And I was doing that on watercolor paper with Sumi paintbrushes. And I ended up with huge waves encompassing things and stuff. Honestly, I don't do a lot of what goes on inside of me because a lot of what goes on inside of me is so dark. And I don't want to put it out there. That's one of the reasons I listen to music when I paint. It fills me with peace and joy. And oh yeah, and I used to when I painted, I would paint on my front porch and sing at the top of my lungs. You know, sing, listen to music, and paint. All of that would fill my soul. And at the same time, I'd get done and my brain would feel like mush because I was thinking so hard and didn't even realize it. I don't know how to describe that one. But I pretty much did plan most of my artwork, especially the professional work. I get the sense that even Pollock planned, even though it looks like all he did was throw paint. That dude planned. He knew where he was going to throw what. He knew what colors worked best near what to give the impression that he wanted to give. You know, compositionally, it just worked for me.
What
Sometimes,
medium what's your like dream medium? One thing that if you could, and you had you could carte blanche the all the materials you needed. What is your dream medium?
well, if I could still do it, it would be oils. I loved them. I had different size easels for whatever I was working on. I had an easel that had a winch. I still have it, actually. It's under my porch. And those paintings, the Inconceivable series, I actually got hooked up on the porch to a winch, and we had a hole cut in the floor so I could drop the painting down into the floor so I could reach it. Talk about doing whatever you can to be able to paint. That series screamed, "You have to finish me." And that's why I ended up painting it from a wheelchair. It was that important to get that out there. Even though it's not a pretty series, It's a painful to look at series. And it's the one thing I've ever painted that I would not consider pretty, or attractive. It's painful to look at, especially in person, because they're really in your face. They're huge. But no, oils, dude, I painted with my fingers. I'd paint with every single finger.
I love finger painting. I think every woman should finger paint. You can
Oh,
get non-toxic ones. It's just the most wonderful feeling in the world.
it is amazing. I painted a painting of a form of the Pieta, and it was a statue basically. Whenever I painted a few statuary, and to get that smoothness, man, you got to use your fingers. A lot of my faces and things, painting faces, I used my fingers. I did enjoy painting portraits if it wasn't dead people. I really did, because people's skin changes. You look at your hand or whatever, and you'll see, green here and purple there, and and it's hard to describe. I don't know if you notice this, but when I am making art, when I am walking out in the world, I see everything differently. I see more color. I see more contrast. I basically see more. For me, painting, because I was a realistic, it was learning how to see, learning how to really see. Like that one portrait I painted, the woman's eye, the one eye, you can barely see her eye. It's in the shadows. And it's so poignant. It's so poignant, because I don't know if you guys posted that underneath here or not. Looking to see if I see that portrait. If so, I'll be able to refer to it. Oh, the one portrait, the little girl with the frog, that was called Waiting for a Kiss, because, the frog and the prince thing. And that one's 5 feet tall. That was fun. I don't see that one, and I don't know that I can find it, because I just have a different phone. My phone died last week, turned into a brick. Anyway.
Well, if you send it to, we'll get it up. Don't even worry about it.
Okay. Well, that portrait was probably the best portrait I ever painted. It was a normal size. It wasn't massive. And it was a woman whose husband had died of cancer. And the photo I painted from, he had cancer at the time. He was only going to live for another couple of months. And they took that picture when they remarried, reaffirmed their vows. And it was in a dark stairwell, and she was wearing a black dress, and he was white as a sheet. And she said when he was healthy, he had the same skin tone as I did. Can you do something? And I said, sure. And can you maybe make my dress blue? And I said, sure. And a different background. I said, sure. And I literally revamped that whole photo except for their faces and the expressions in their eyes. One just, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I'm not. I just wanted to let you know, if we don't have it, we'll get it and we'll add it. That was all I was gonna say to the comments to make sure.
Yeah, if I could look for it and do this at the same time, I would. But my phone, just photos, I just got them downloaded on this phone, and it's they're all out of sequence.
It's okay, Skylar. Nat's put it up. It's in the comments.
Oh, yay! Woo. I appreciate that. Whoops.
I'm going to turn this back over to Hazel Moon, because I jumped in because I was all excited about the art conversation. But I know that she has a lot of questions and a conversation to have with you. But yeah, that's just, I love anytime I can have a conversation with a fellow artist. It's just amazing.
Did I manage to answer the questions you asked?
You did.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, you guys, if you look at that portrait, that's the best portrait I ever did in my life, man. That thing, look at the expression in the woman's eyes. She is looking into your soul and saying, I love this person so much. And it all comes through. The expression in that woman's face. Oh my goodness. Yeah, absolutely love that. Anyway, Hazel Moon, what you got for me?
Did you paint any of your pictures for yourself? Are they on your walls now, or did you sell them all?
The little girl and the frog is on my wall. And what happened there was I was at a therapist's office, and that little girl was sitting next to me, and I looked over at her and said, "So what are you in for?" And she said, "Well, my parents are in there talking to the therapist because, I'm having trouble because the kids at school are making fun of me and calling me albino and all these other things." And I said, "You're serious, aren't you?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Girl, I tell you what, we'll talk to your parents. If they give me permission, I will paint your portrait and you will never doubt how beautiful you are again." I talked to her parents, got permission. We went out and did a photo shoot, and we acted like it was a photo shoot for a model for this girl. And I think she was 13, 14. It was so fun to do. And I painted her portrait, and then her portrait got permission to put it into a show at the school. And it was placed front and center in front of the door as you walked in. It's the first thing you saw was that child's face. And she came in, and people were like, "Oh my God, it's you. It's you in this portrait. That's you." And I think it probably helped to change her life. And the picture with the frog was just one of the ones that we took that I loved. And so I painted that for myself. That's another one of my favorites, really. The series I painted, and it was originally for Every Woman Treaty, but then I ended up giving it to a domestic violence shelter so that they could use it to raise funds and whatnot. Does that answer that? What else you got?
Yeah, although I can imagine that those photos bring back the times that you did all those paintings. And I was listening to what you were saying to Peter about not painting what's inside you, but in a way using it to move you into a different zone, a more spiritual zone, a more connected to nature, to take you away from those bad memories.
Yeah, normally I don't paint harsh things like that. And that one, I don't think I could have painted it completely realistically if I tried. That's why, if you'll notice, the two that are up there, they're all monochrome. The whole series is monochrome. And the only color that are in each of them is their eyes and the evidence of abuse. And that's because I wanted those two things to leap off the canvas and slap somebody upside the head and say, "Yeah, look at their eyes, people. See the pain in their eyes. Look at the abuse that women live with every single day of our lives from birth to death." One of the paintings is of an older lady. One of them is a younger woman. Like, probably 18, maybe. I don't know. That one reminded me of me. I may post those up into my timeline. Because I only posted those two, sent those two so that it didn't take over. But that was a hard one. Mostly I like to paint things that fill me with joy and that take me away from the pain of being in this world. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but the world is a painful place. Especially now. It's gotten very dark. And I firmly believe that the things that we do and say ripple out across the universe to the very feet of our God/goddess. And so if I can paint beauty that someone can look at and it'll take their breath away, then that's what I want to do. And that's what I plan to do with the pastels if I can get them down. And if not, I'm going to have to pick up those acrylics that I got. But yeah, I have to be careful about the music I listen to. Because some music will take you into a dark place. When I was a teenager, I listened to Alice Cooper Welcome to My Nightmare. Black Sabbath, all of them. I was a big Black Sabbath fiend. But they're dark. They're hard. I listen to a lot of dark music, and now I try to listen to a lot of goddess music, frankly. I'll tell you, Christians know how to how to worship. That's one thing they are good at. Their music is quite beautiful. So I'll listen to that too, even though I'm still disturbed at them for ignoring the mother. Where would you like to go from here, Hazel?
Well, let's go in a slightly different direction, which is that you came out as lesbian late in your life. And I know it's one of the big sadness of your life that you weren't able to live as lesbian from an earlier age.
Yeah, I was an idiot. I think part of the reason I didn't get it when I was younger is the autism. I really do. Also, I was in a really religious, Christian Science. I don't know what you want to call it, but that's what our family was. I was 58 years old when I finally wrestled my mind around that. And it was really hard because my family, well, I lost most of them, which I'm sure is familiar to a lot of lesbians. My mother, all she said was, well, don't put a target on your back. And I was like, yeah, okay, I hear you. And so I immediately rode my motorcycle down to the Atlanta Pride Parade and rode with the Dykes on Bikes in the front of the Pride Parade and said, put the target here. Little did I know that the real target on my back would come from within the so-called community. I didn't find that out for a little bit late, for a few more months. I joined Dykes on Bikes. And they were going to fly no turf flags, and I didn't even know what a turf was. But I went to New York City World Pride for 2 weeks, and I volunteered for a bunch of stuff to make myself go, which was good because I was in that car accident, and I ended up having to go in a wheelchair. Try to wheelchair around New York for 2 weeks. Not a fun thing. But yeah, you talk about pissed off. I'll tell you this, and it's important that people hear it. They had a 2-day human rights conference from 9 to 5. For 2 days, they had one lesbian session called Her Story. And I thought, excellent. I can learn something. I can get a clue. And, because I'm literally, at that point, I was 59. And I wheeled into that room, and there were 4 men on the panel, 3 gay men and a man in a dress pretending to be a woman. Yeah, the lesbian Her Story session. 4 flipping men on the panel, people. You talk about pissed. I sat there quiet, listening to their stuff. About halfway through, the dude in the dress jumps up and says, I wait for the day that everyone is either trans or gender fluid, like this is some great proclamation. At the end of that thing, they had a question and answer thing. I raised my hand. They were nice. They figured they'd call on the old lady in the wheelchair. I said, I don't have a question. I have a response to a comment. I am not trans. I am not gender fluid. It took me 58 years to figure out that I was a lesbian. You know, the first letter in the acronym. Why are we forgetting that lesbians exist? And I went off on them for a couple of minutes, actually. And actually, I was surprised. There were about 100 people in the room, and the panel, I didn't pay no attention to them, but the people sitting up in the room, they applauded. So that was amazing. That was good. I didn't realize how crazy and dangerous that could have been until I got back home from World Pride, and I made one question on Facebook about men and women's sports. And I immediately got from all of these pretending to be trans people that I had befriended up there, not knowing what the hell was going on. I thought you understood from the one guy. And from the woman that was pretending to be a guy, I got, fuck you, you can go die in a grease fire. Sorry about the language, but that was what I got. And that spoke volumes. So then I learned that I'm a TERF. And so I went back to Dykes on Bikes and basically told them how I felt about the fact that they were willing to kick out real lesbians so that men pretending to be lesbians would be happy. And so that was my last discussion with Dykes on Bikes. Basically, I'm a dyke on a bike that was kicked out of Dykes on Bikes. And when I realized what was happening to young lesbians out there, you know, you think about it. I come into this at almost 60 years old. I've been working on myself for 30 years because it took me 30 years to recover from the first 30 years of my life. The first 30 years of my life were such a literal shit show and so painful and destructive that it took 30 years for me to work through and process all that garbage. So by the time I came out and faced down all these crazy people trying to tell me that men could be lesbians, I wasn't about it and I wasn't going to have it. I was like, how dare you tell me that I have to be with men when I finally figured out that I never wanted to be in the first place? How dare you? So then I decided to start saying shit for the young ones that couldn't. You know, the young lesbians that could not speak out because they would lose their jobs or, you know, be threatened with. I mean, I have to tell you, Magdalene Burns, I love that woman so much. Magdalene Burns saved me. After I got home from that Pride in New York, I came across Magdalene Burns videos and I binge watched them, you know? And it was like 3 weeks before she died. So I binge watched all her videos and then she died. And it broke my soul, you know? Especially when they were jumping up there all happy about it and whatnot. I have been very proud of myself that I never got violent. Even when I was out at events and people were acting like they would get violent with me. Even when I was actually accused by one of our own people of punching a guy on a bike, which I did not do. All I did was grab his megaphone and yank it down so he couldn't yell in my face. I tried to tell the woman, I'm like, look, if I'd have hit him, you'd have known it. He'd have been in the bushes and his bike would have been on the ground. You don't mess around. I've done really well with that. And that's one of the reasons I got off social media every now and then. Whenever I get to the place where I am really ready, I mean, I am so ready to show up at one of those events and start flattening some people. Yeah, then I have to get away from it for a while and remember that that is not who I am anymore and hasn't been since my early 20s. It took me too much to break away from that to fall back into it now. Anyway, and then I find out that they're trying to turn all of our young butch lesbians into men. And I really freaked out about that one day. I was looking at, I think it was that nasty woman out in California, before and after pictures of women that had had massive double mastectomies. And you know what I noticed? Maybe it's the artist in me, I don't know. But what I noticed is all of the women that have had their breasts removed, they had one of two type of breast. They either had breasts that men would make fun of because they weren't that perfect shape, or they had breasts that were so perfect and beautiful that men would never leave them alone. And so they removed the problem. And the day I looked at that, I freaked. I literally freaked. I live on the side of a mountain. I screamed out across the valley. What can I do to my goddess? And it was kind of funny. What I got back was, well, you're going to need a new leather jacket and a new pair of boots. I said, can you be a little less specific? Oh, baby, you're going for a ride. And that's how the ride, A Woman's Rebellion, was conceived. All I did was get on 2 forms of social media, Twitter at the time and Facebook, and say, okay, people, I'm going for a ride. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to protest at all these children's gender clinics. I'm going to protest the White House, protest women's prisons, protest anywhere we need to friggin' protest to get some noise on this thing. Who's with me and who wants to help me organize it? Because I don't know how. I'm just going to get on a motorcycle and go. And a bunch of women volunteered to help me, and we had a committee to make it happen. We raised enough money to where, and honestly, I ended up stopping half of a country early because both my mental and my physical health collapsed just completely. I talked to my therapist on the phone up in Milwaukee, and she said, come home now. You are done. Do whatever you have to do, but you come home now. And I listened to my therapist because she's been my therapist for 15 years, and she knows that nobody's born in the wrong body. But anyway, that's how the ride happened. And that, I was really proud of that because I hadn't been out of the wheelchair for very long, 2 years. I'd been in a wheelchair for a half a year. Got screws in my foot, damaged nerve in my back, 5 surgeries on that. And I got on that bike and went down and started in Orlando and made it all the way to Milwaukee. You know? We stickered everywhere. And honestly, if anybody wants to fight back, but is afraid to do so, stickering is the perfect way. Stealth sticker. That's what I called it. You get the sticker in your hand, you peel off the back of it so that it's ready, walk by something, there's a whap, slap it on there, smooth it across, keep walking. You know, people won't even know you did it. Even though I did a bunch of gas stations on toll roads because that's a captive audience. And I went up to a guy who was pumping gas, and I just walked up and said, you didn't see me, sir. And I put the sticker there. He looked at it, read it, never saw you. You know? So that was cool. We had a bunch of posters that we got printed up. Where would you like to go from there?
Well, I think that the activism you're talking about in terms of both social media and doing the ride, it really took its toll. And, you know, I know that you left Twitter a while back, and you've come back on a different account, and that you have to take your time out when you need to. And so what are you doing to rebuild your sanity and your mental health and the peace?
Wow, I got to tell you, when I first got off the ride, when I first got home, I was so traumatized by everything that I felt like an alternate universe, because I literally live on the side of a beautiful mountain. I don't see people. I see more black bears and coyotes and things like that than I do people. And it was a real shakeup. And I'll be honest, I won't mention any names, but I will say that what we had people within the group that were key people that tried to destroy me and tried to steal the motorcycle. They literally tried to steal my bike. And they had a bike. But anyway, so that kind of broke me because it was the people that I had gotten so close to attempting to do this thing. And there was a lot of gaslighting and stuff going on in there. And it just got really, you know, you call it friendly fire, but that shit ain't friendly. And that's one thing I will say, that anybody that really puts your head above the parapet in this movement, expect to catch cannons from both sides. I will never forget being out on that motorcycle on the road, going 75 miles an hour down the road on a broken bike that I didn't know was still broken. It got broken in Philadelphia roads. A screw broke, and it was vibrating so bad I had to pull off right away. Had to drill it out and redo it. I'm going through all of this crap, and Fred Sargent is on his social media calling me a grifter and all these other things. And here I was out there literally just about killing myself. to do the work that I felt like my goddess was calling me to do. You'll catch it from our side and the other side both. I had so many people threatening to come to my house and kill me. I literally got to the point where I posted up, I have a gun and a shovel. I live on the side of a national forest. They will never find the body. Come to my home if you dare. Because I got tired of it. That violent streak that, I had as a child started peeking back out. The best thing that I can do for myself is I read a lot of books. I read silly books that have no basis in reality whatsoever, to just take a break from the insanity that is real life at this time. If you just look at all of the nasty out there, it will destroy you over time. Some people are stronger than me. I am extremely sensitive. It is a part of being autistic for me. I didn't know that at the time, but as a child, both my mom and my sister used to just rail on me. You're too sensitive. You're too sensitive. Well, no, guess what? Being too sensitive is my flipping superpower, people, because I am so sensitive. I feel things so deeply that I will do whatever the hell I have to try and make things right. I will do whatever I can to help a person. It's a superpower. Love is a superpower. One of the things that pissed me off so much about the trans cult movement was that they took words like choose love is love, and be kind, and turned them into choose hate anybody who isn't just like you, destroy your enemies. It was so Orwellian, just completely Orwellian. Anyway, as far as taking care of me, I read the silly books, lit RPGs, which are books that are about, like isekais. These are books where people, like, you disappear from here, you appear somewhere else. There's a system, you can gain levels and do stuff. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'd be a druid because I'm kind of a druid here. I listen to really good music, really spiritual music that is true love and light. There's a lot of female artists out there that put out some great goddess music. I actually play some games. When I was younger, when I first moved up here, I didn't leave the house for 3 years because I was not capable. And I played World of Warcraft. It was the only social interaction I had was World of Warcraft for 3 years. My dad came up, he said, you only have so much time on this planet. You may just want to decide what you're going to do with it. And that woke me up and got me off of World of Warcraft and back out into the world again. He's gone now, but when I was on the ride, I'm going flying down the road in the rain on the bike. I said, I figured out what I was supposed to do with it. Because, I feel like one of the reasons that I'm still here, I was suicidal from the ages of 16 to 58. Think about that timetable. I came out as a lesbian. And honestly, people say, well, did you come out, tell everybody? I'm like, yes, I told everybody. Because what you see with me is what you get. I have no desire to hide anything from anyone.
I think part
Anyway.
of coming from a childhood as dark as ours was, I think for most of the time, it's a pretty much guaranteed if you have that kind of childhood, you're going to get into substance abuse. And you mentioned that earlier. I did. I've been sober 8 years, but for 15 years, I was on opioids. So, and they took my sister. So in her childhood, she had issues as well. Do you think that in a way, um, would you say that as well, that it's like with most people with our backgrounds do at some point slip into having issues with, because it numbs us?
I don't know about most people, but I know I started drinking hard drinking when I was 12 years old. Started smoking weed when I was 13, started doing hard drugs when I was probably 15 or 16. I quit drinking when I was 30 years old. I was also an anorexic bulimic for 7 years. I was put into a hospital for a month where I was forced to eat and was not allowed to go to the bathroom for 2 hours without a bathroom buddy. Yeah, imagine that shit. Because they weren't going to let you go throw it up either. I will say that I wish that everybody did AA, whether they drank or not. AA is a really good blueprint for living. It really is. It saved my life, and I've used what I've learned from AA more than I can say. You can use it on any addiction, that's for sure. I used it for the alcohol and the food. I almost didn't survive that because I relapsed after I got out for about a year, and it about killed me. And I literally took myself out in the backyard, threw myself down in the dirt, and screamed out to God, please take this from me. Please help me. I can't do this. And I don't know how or why, but I know that I was able to stick to the food plan after that, even though there were times when I would get food, and if I stopped eating halfway through the allotted amount of food I'm supposed to eat, I was like, my brain would shift and say, you're done. There were times I sat there for 2 hours just to make sure I finished that food because I wasn't what they called abstinent otherwise. Over the years, I got healthy enough to be able to just eat like a normal human again. But it took a very long time. And I will say that I think one of the reasons that I didn't realize that I was a lesbian until I was 58 was because I was on so many psych meds. And most of those psych meds take away your interest in sex at all. And they just do. And so for a good, oh gosh, from probably 32 until about 58, I was on psych meds, like almost, they had to switch them every few years because you get used to them and then they have to keep increasing them and then they'll switch you to something else. They kept me on the planet, which is a good thing, but I have a lot of regrets. I'll just say that. I have a lot of regrets. But yeah, the things that people like you and me have experienced as children, which we won't really delve into specifics, but there are some things that just scar you for life. You get to where it isn't as bad. Like, personally, as a teenager, I experienced a lot of rape. As a 27-year-old, I experienced a gang rape. These are things that scar you for life. They just do. And that's why when you hear any men out there saying, well, we'll just convict the rapist. Well, what about the woman that got raped already? When are you guys going to start stepping up and doing something about the men out there that are doing these things? One of my favorite things to post is hashtag dead men don't rape. I don't think that, I think it should be a death penalty because they literally destroys a woman's lives. And that's just my opinion on it, and people can take that or leave it. But I do know that I am really tired of when a case comes to court and all they talk about is how good and how wonderful the rapist is and how they have such a bright future ahead of them. What about the bright future of the woman that you have destroyed? What about her bright future, people? You know what hurt me the most when I came out as a lesbian? I'll be honest, a lot hurt me. But one of the things that hurt me the most was realizing how much the world hates women. Realizing that the world does not consider women human beings. You know, Muslims consider us like cows and various and sundry. They're not the only ones, people. They're just the ones stupid enough to say it out loud. You know? Because I'll be honest with you, if people thought of us as human beings, the trans cult never would have been able to take foot. That crap could not have happened. They couldn't have passed all of this breeders and bleeders and chest beaters and vagina presenting. Good gosh, somebody actually said that. That couldn't happen if women were literally considered human, 51% of the human population. I wish I had answers. I don't. I just try to be a voice, you know, speaking up and saying the truth as I see it. And I look at the world as it is today, and I actually said out loud, you know, if Jesus plans on showing up, if Jesus plans on returning at some point, he better get off his butt, because the world is burning around us all with evil in places that are so high that I don't see anybody touching it. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know about any of that stuff. All I know is I have to stay away from it off and on and paint, listen to music, read a book, spend time with loved ones that know who I am and love me anyway. All the things that build you up inside. If we spend all our time on X fighting with the insanity, we will go insane. Anyway, that's it for that one.
You sound like you've got about 40 different lives in your one life. And yet you were saying how you'd stayed in the house for 3 years and then had to get out. And then you really got out, didn't you? It was like, okay, I'm going to get out. I'm going to travel the continent.
Well, I feel like I've led a lot of different lives. I've done a lot of different jobs. I've worked on shrimp boats. I've got a degree in electronic technology. I worked on airplanes and boats and cars and stuff. I was a waitress. My favorite job was pizza delivery, believe it or not. Loved it. My second favorite job was taxi driver, limousine driver. Loved it. Absolutely love that stuff, man. I love meeting new people and talking to new people, but just for a short time. You know? And you get to do that when you drive taxis and limousines. You get to meet them for a short time. You get to touch in their lives, they touch in yours, and then you keep going on. I hitchhiked cross country from north to south 3 times. When I was 18, I hitchhiked from Georgia to Wisconsin. When I was a month and a half pregnant, I hitchhiked back down to Georgia. When I was 4.5 months pregnant, I hitchhiked back to Wisconsin. Those 2 were because I had nowhere to live. And so you kind of do what you have to do. The 4.5 months was hard. And you know what kills me is there was still a guy that wanted to try to rape me. 4.5 months pregnant. Dude knew it. I was 4.5 months pregnant. I simply threatened to put his brain out his window with his own tire checker. That's a sledgehammer, by the way. They have these little sledgehammers they check their tires with. But hitchhiking cross country was so interesting and exciting, and you met the neatest people. Yeah, you met some assholes, but I got good at scaring off the assholes. It's like, okay, if they're asking you, what would you do if, over and over, you know that they're contemplating the if. And I would just say, well, I carry a knife and I would kill them. And then they let you out immediately because they figure you're insane. I wasn't insane. I was just convincing them that I was insane so they'd let me out. The extremes we have to go to. You know, I have seen some of the darkest shit that a woman on this planet can see. And I'm really grateful that I haven't seen the darkest. You know, I never got taken to Epstein's flippin' island. Whew. Being a woman on this planet, you gotta be so strong. You know, they're just now talking about how the medical stuff doesn't keep up. You know, they don't care about women. All they care about is men. You know, the birth control thing. Men had birth control too. They just were such pansies that they couldn't handle the side effects and whatnot. So they make women, you know, do it and put it all on the woman. Well, no, it shouldn't be that way. Men are the one that can get a bunch of women pregnant in 1 year. You know, women get pregnant once in a year. Men can get thousands of women pregnant, depending on how many they decide to attack at a given time. But no, make the women take the birth control. Make it make sense. We can't. I don't know that I will ever be capable of going out there and doing the work that I did for those few years that I did it. I don't know that I'll ever be capable of it again, frankly. My physical health won't allow it. My mental health definitely won't allow it. I am really grateful. You know, I was hoping that that Tish person was going to be a strong lesbian speaking out, but then it turns out that she's just another one that, you know, and you know, you think about it, how do you not know that men are destroying women's spaces as a lesbian and not know about it until like just a few months back? No, the minute I came out as a lesbian, it was really obvious what was going on with the cult. It was too obvious. You cannot be a lesbian and not know what's going on out there. You can only be a lesbian and be willfully ignorant of what's going on out there. That's just my take on it. What next? I'm not really good at just rambling along because I don't want to bore people. I want you guys to basically tell me what you want me to hear me talk about, and I will run with it as best I can.
Skylar, you are never boring. You're a lot of things. Boring is not one of them. What I was going to say is, in terms of the what next, what about what's next for you? What are you wanting to do with your life? Hopefully in a more positive way for both your mental and physical health.
Wow. That's been really hard because I've been really struggling the past few months with even existing. This planet is very hard to be on when you feel people's pain. I am not kidding. It is just deadly. I hope to be able to focus on art again. That means I'll have to try to stay off of X more. Because the more I'm on there, the less I'm able to pick up any art. It's like it devours my soul or something. I would like to get closer to my goddess. I've been looking into druidry, and shamanism, frankly. I read a lot of like spiritual stuff. I love Animal Speak is a really good book, by the way, about, you know, animal totems and whatnot. I commune with nature a lot. If I was younger, there's a lot of things I'd like to do. I'd love to work with wildlife people, conservation people, and rehab, wildlife rehab, and things like that. Because I have like a sixth sense with animals of any kind. I love animals. When I was a kid, I used to just say, God, could you please just send me to an island with just animals, no people? Because, yeah, I do really good with animals. I don't know where I can go next, to be honest. I don't trust people enough to be out in the world anymore. Whenever I leave the house, I take a Ruger 380 with me because I'm just not having it anymore. When I was younger, I had a lot of people try to give me guns when I hitchhiked cross country. They tried to give me guns for protection. And I'm like, do you not understand? If you give me a gun, I will end up shooting someone with it. Because back then, I could not be trusted. I had too much of I would have shot out every red light in Madison, Wisconsin, just because I didn't like red lights. You know, I was a mess when I was younger. So as far as going from here, I just don't even know. I have been taking a massive break for some time and just trying to function with life. I'll be honest, my health is bad enough. I don't know how much longer I'll have to worry about it. My eyesight's going. They call it wet macular degeneration. Basically, that means that, you know, your eyesight is disappearing. It's worse in one eye, so I can still see a little bit better with the other. I figure I'm not going to be doing tight realism anymore, no matter what art I do, because I attempted to do so and I ended up seeing double so much that it just wasn't going to happen for me. So I'll probably try and slip into non-representational art, working with colors, shapes, and the feelings that those bring out. I really just don't know. Isn't that wild? But it's not the first time I've been in this position. Oh yeah, I was in daycare for years too. You talk about a great job. Dude, I love daycare. I worked with, well, it depended on the year, but like for a few years I worked with like 1-year-olds to 3-year-olds. That's when kids are at their best, man. They are so interested in everything. And I used to love reading them stories like where the wild things are and stuff like that. But my favorite, believe it or not, was working with newborns. So you see, I think it was 8 weeks or 6, I can't remember, 6 or 8 weeks to a year old. I worked with newborns at a place called KinderCare. They're a big organization. And I'll be honest with you, those people were good. They had a checklist where you would check off stuff like whether the kid was looking right or, you know, whether they were developing right. And I made artwork and plastered it all over the walls. Yeah, I miss working with kids. I may go back to that. I may go back to the local school. For a long time there, I tutored in English and math because I was one of the few people that could do the new math. And so I'd teach them both old and new so they could do it one way or the other. And then I worked with the high school with the art. But I had to stop because of the trans cult stuff. You know, because I'm not going to call a boy a girl or vice versa. And so I ended up stopping, even though that teacher still contacts me every now and then to help a student over the phone.
I
So
think
that worked.
sometimes when you're so empathetic, and I think a lot of us are, it's a very black and white. We're either empathetic or we're nothing, right? We don't do emotions in small amounts. Do you think part of, because you like working with kids, you liked working at the school, they're still calling you to do that and stuff, that part of it that it makes it even harder for you is that as an empathetic person, you don't want someone else to feel pain because that is going to start a chain reaction within you. So, and the trans ideology is one issue that you just can't fix as quickly as you would try to fix everything. Do you think that that has something to do with why you had to pull away from it when they were in the schools?
Actually, I think it was because I was worried about getting that art teacher in trouble. Because I am what you see is what you get. And so I wouldn't be able to play the games that they have to play in schools these days around these children. I will, and you were right, though. It is hard working. Like there's one girl, and she did a piece of artwork, and it was broken pieces of mirror. It was a painting of her looking in a mirror with all the pieces broken. And I talked to her after school one day and I said, look, you could talk to me, right? And that girl broke down and told me everything that was going on at home, and I went and talked to the principal about it, and we ended up getting her out of the home. There was one girl that was suicidal, and I said, look, that was back when I was still suicidal too. And I said, I'll make a deal with you. I won't leave the planet if you won't. We'll have a partnership. I'm going to stick around. You got to stick around too. Things like that. I worked with her a lot. But then she went to college and the trans cult got a hold of her. And instead of being not bisexual, she was calling herself pansexual and started calling me a bigot, and then left and wouldn't talk to me anymore. And considering I worked with that girl for like 2 years and helped her stay on the planet, that one hurt. That one hurt a lot.
You
You
said
lose a
that.
lot of people.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you said that she did this art project of the broken glass, which made me think of kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery by mending it with like a dusted gold or silver or platinum. And I found I was really drawn. This was one of the first types of art I was drawn to. And I just, when you were saying that you were, that was her project, I think that's kind of, w- there's never going to be a point where we're all put back together all the way, but something beautiful can develop in those broken areas, kind of thing.
Well, I agree. I will say that even though, I wish that I had not experienced many of the horrors that I did, the fact that I did makes it where I can talk to an awful lot of women and help an awful lot of women recover, because I have a huge toolbox of things, and tools for staying around, tools for healing and whatnot. And sometimes when you're sitting, I am better one-on-one with people, where you can just sit down and they can tell you what they are trying to recover from. And I was a healing minister for about, I don't know, 5 years, because I was a Christian for 30. And when it turns out that as a Christian, I was a temple priestess, because as a Christian, I set the table, I set the communion table, I served the wine, I sang in the choir, I did all the stuff that you do in the temple, And when I studied with a couple of goddess priestesses, it dawned on me, oh, you were a temple priestess the whole time, you know? But it really is the spirit of the thing. I figured talking about spirit is tricky with people. I figured if I talked about it, I was going to piss off the Christians, and I'm going to piss off any feminists that don't like the Christians, because I was a Christian for a long time too. So, but I honestly don't care, because what I know for a fact is that there is a presence, a spiritual presence that literally flows through the air that we breathe, that is real and that is always present, at least for me, is always present, no matter whether I call it God or goddess or what the fuck do you think you're doing? Doesn't care. I have ranted at God. I actually burned a Bible years ago because I was so mad at God. I shredded it and burned it, and had it replaced about a week later that someone gave me. It happens. I just read a lot of spiritual books.
The one thing I would say about you is that especially when it comes to you being an artist, or your belief in this fight that what we're doing is the right thing and we have to keep going, is that you believe in yourself, and you believe that whether people are trying to knock you down or not, you don't think that you do not belong in this movement, because you know you do. And I think one of the things that a majority of the women in this movement do, they will fight for everyone to be heard that is female. They will fight for every woman to be treated fairly, and they will uplift and empower women, but they never include themselves in that. We're always so quick to forget that we are part of what we're fighting for. If you could give women one piece of advice about remembering to include themselves, to believe in themselves, whatever it is that they enjoy doing, or brings them peace, or brings them happiness, or allows them to work through things, what would it be?
I would say that if you are not okay, you're not able to help anybody. You have to fix you first. It's really hard. You know, like if you are struggling so much because of attacks and whatnot, you have to defend yourself. You have to know your worth. Otherwise, how much can you do out there? Because the people out there will try to tear you down. This world will try to shred you. And if you're not in your own corner, who is going to be? You know? One thing I found is that for me anyway, it was a lot easier for me to forgive other people than to forgive myself. When I first figured out I was a lesbian, I was so darn mad for the first year. I almost did not survive that year. If I hadn't had a dog that I had to take to someone so that it didn't end up astray, I would have swam out in the ocean up in Massachusetts and I wouldn't have been here. I was so lost. I could not forgive myself. And I finally remembered somebody said, you cannot blame yourself for not knowing what you did not know. And that is useful in a lot of circumstances, because frequently we won't know something and we'll bite it because of it. And then we blame ourselves and we're so mad at ourselves. And it's like, but you did not know that at the time. Now, did you? You know, you can't blame yourself for what you didn't know. And I would say that I have to have a higher power. I only exist because of a higher power for me. This is just for me. A lot of people don't believe in a higher power, and that's okay. But for me, it's crucial to my survival. But I've had way too much evidence of it, of sitting there walking down the road hitchhiking, talking to God and saying, can you just send me a ride here? Next thing you know, a ride turns up here. Can you get me off this interstate? Not only does the ride pick me up, it takes me to an alternate route going the same way off of the interstate. Can you please just get me to Madison, Wisconsin, even though I'm outside of Nashville? Next thing you know, guy pulls over, says I'm going up to Janesville, which was just outside of Madison. I've had too many circumstances where I talk to this being, whatever, whoever, wherever it is, and been answered in return. So for me, having that relationship is huge, because I'm never alone. I'm never, ever alone, no matter what is happening to me, no matter where I am, what I'm doing, I'm never alone. And that's been proven to me over and over and over ad nauseum, to the point where I just can't doubt it. I've had that being talk to me through a flipping jukebox. I mean, anything, any book, any person, I can hear that voice. My dad used to ask me, how do you know that it's God talking to you? I said, well, because I talk to this being every day. I listen to that voice every day. So I recognize it when it's talking to me. But if somebody doesn't have that, then they're going to need to have somewhere deep inside that is strong enough without it. I personally am not, but I'm sure there are people out there that are. I find that if I don't have help, I will be drinking like you wouldn't believe it, just to run away, escape. You know, I will say that suicide is the ultimate flight response. If someone feels like dying, it's because they're trying to run. They're running away. And it's a permanent answer to a temporary issue. And in this life, all issues are pretty temporary.
We do
I
have
mean,
a
even the,
request in the comments for your playlists. And so you don't have to someone wanting to know what you listen to. So
oh, okay.
if you be so kind before, because we will be posting this space on the Scarlet Frequency after the season, and we'll include Skylar's playlist with that.
Um, sure. Do you want me to send it to Hazel Moon, or do you want me to
Yeah,
find?
we'll get it later. It's no, I'm just, but I just
Okay.
wanted to make you
Well,
aware that there's been a request for that if you want to
I have a
for one.
few. I have a few playlists. I wish I still had the ride playlist. I had a playlist on the ride, and it was a badass playlist, man. Because I would get on that motorcycle, put my helmet on, turn on my music on stun, and hit the road. And it was a great playlist. Great playlist. But yeah, I got a few different playlists. I will share a couple of them, I guess. I listen to an awful lot of music, but I'll share a couple of my favorites. Yeah, I can do that. There's a lot of good music out there, people. A lot of good music. You know, the kind that kind of lifts up your soul. I don't listen to a lot of Christian music anymore because I honestly got too pissed off at the church for, you know, relegating the mother to this nebulous Holy Spirit. It's kind of like calling us, you know, what are they, breeders and things like that, you know? It's like, no, the third side of the Trinity is the mother, okay? She is the Holy Spirit. But anyway, that's just me. So I don't listen to a lot of Christian music anymore. That's easy to find though, and if anybody wants to listen to it, Hosanna Integrities is really good stuff. But mostly I listen to goddess music now, and I really love it. A lot of different kinds. Adi Shakti is a wonderful song and there's a lot of different forms of Adi Shakti. And it's basically singing to the creative fire within you, you know, the creatrix, the creator. So that Adi Shakti is a great song. My favorite version of it is Mantra Girl. If anybody's not heard of Mantra Girl, she had a couple of albums out, and a lot of her music was on my ride playlist. Adi Shakti from her from one of her albums was one of the first songs on there. But yeah, I'll be happy to do that. I would say that if you want to do art and you try a medium and it doesn't sing to your soul, pick a different one. I started drawing when I was a kid because my mom worked at an art store and brought a bunch of drawing books home. So I drew a lot back then, but it didn't really sing to me, so I didn't really run with it. I just drew some simple horse heads and things from the books that she had, you know, those little instruction books you can get. It wasn't until I picked up oils and just went, holy cow, this is the neatest thing since sliced bread. You know, if you pick up pencils, it doesn't do it for you, pick up acrylics. If acrylics don't do it for you, pick up oils. If that don't work, pick up pastels. If that don't work, pick up gouache. My sister just sent me gouache. I've never painted with gouache. Have no idea how that's going to work. It's kind of similar to watercolor from what I can tell. Watercolors. I enjoy watercolors. But the first time I picked it up, it didn't sing to me. The only time I did watercolors really was because they were easy ways to do artwork for various people that wanted paintings of their restaurants or whatnot when I was a professional. And so I would do like St. Simon's Lighthouse or whatever. Also, if you want to break into selling your artwork, it isn't hard. You just have to believe in yourself enough and believe in your artwork enough. I went to a bunch of galleries, and I went to a few and they didn't show any interest. I finally showed up at one and they showed interest, and I ended up letting them carry my artwork. There was one place I really wanted to carry my artwork, but she was really hooty tooty and she didn't want to carry my artwork because I wasn't a recognizable name. So I went out to a place called the Cloister, which is on Sea Island, where all the rich people go to stay. And I painted the cloister all around outside of it. It was kind of historic at the time. I painted it in Impressionist style. I walked into, I made some prints with it, walked into their gift shop and said, would you like to carry these prints in your gift shop? And they went, oh my gosh, yes, we would. So I put my prints in their gift shop. The woman with the snooty gallery saw my prints in their gift shop, contacted me to show my work in her gallery, after she turned me down before because she didn't know me. There's a lot of different ways to get into selling your artwork. I know there's a lot of ways online now. I never tried to sell my work online. I went face to face with the galleries, walked in their door. I had a binder with prints of my artwork, and I just handed them the binder and said, would you like to look through this and see if you'd be interested in carrying what I do? Some people loved it, some people didn't. I had enough to where I was able to live in an RV for 5 years. You know? So it works. The biggest thing I find is that you really, and then I guess that's in life in general, you have to be in your own corner. You have to know your own worth. I had a woman come up to me when I was painting a portrait and said, well, are his eyes really that blue? And I just turned and looked at her and said, when you can paint anything even close to this, I will listen to your opinion. Walk away. You know, that's where I got to finally, after I had been painting for, I don't know, I started painting at 35. I went professional at 38. It took me about a year or two to get where I was just like, you know, this is the artwork. This is what I do. You like it or you don't. Take it or leave it. I'm the same way with everything I do, basically, you know, and I did kind of lose it over the trans cult war. I don't handle that as well as I used to. I used to be able, you know, when I first started, you know how when we first start, we try to be nice. We all tried to be nice. We know we did. We all tried to be nice. You can't be nice when the other people want to kill you. It doesn't work. I was in an abusive relationship for 7 years. It was literally a war zone. You can't be nice to people like that. It doesn't work. And I finally got to where now I just read what other people post about it, mostly because they say things that I would like to say, but I can't say anymore because now I just say, oh, F off. You're lying. Shut the hell up. You know, I lost my ability to just sit and reason about it anymore, because to me, there is no debate. That's the only thing they had right. They just had it backwards. There is no debate. Men are not women. Women are not men. That is not a debatable subject. You know, you just can't debate that. And so I don't debate it anymore. Anybody starts doing that mental masturbation with that stuff, it's like, no. Quit trying to run around in circles in your head, trying to make something acceptable when it isn't. And it never was.
Skylar, I really want to thank you for coming and talking to us today. You have a life so chock full of experiences. You've learned so much, and you've talked about a lot of the wisdom you've learned for yourself and how to find that balance between what you're giving out and what you need. And I think all of us hope that you will be finding nourishment in your life and that your eyesight holds out for you to be able to do more art that nourishes you. Thank you so much for joining us.
I really do thank you for asking me to do this. I was kind of a little bit terrified because I haven't done anything like this in a very long time. And life's been very hard for the past few months. And so my mind isn't quite as quick as it used to be, which is one of the reasons I would stop and say, where would you like to go here? I used to could have run with something like this and done just fine. But now I have to work at it a little bit harder because I forget things like, you're fixing to, you have a thought that would help somebody and then you forget what it was the minute it was on your tongue, and it's so irritating. It happens to us as we get older, I think, and brain damage. I have some brain damage from the war, that 7-year war. Yeah. You really do have to believe in yourself enough and forgive yourself enough to be able to continue to grow. I do feel like, one of the reasons we're here is to grow. But sometimes I really question, that's why I read so many spiritual books of all different religions. I have way too many questions. I ask why. I ask why all the time. Do you know there are people out there that don't ask why? How do they get through life without asking why? I don't know. But I have lived an interesting life, and I'm really grateful to have made it to this point in life. I was going to write a book. Actually, my dad was going to write it. It would have been really good too, but then he died. And I just don't have it in me. So there will be no book. But there's, I do have a chapter out in that book it is a chapter about the ride. In the turf book that came out, what is it? Women's Rights, Gender Wrongs. That came out a couple of years ago, I guess. Got a chapter in that. That was cool.
That is cool. I'm really, really glad that the ride is documented because it was just such an amazing thing to do.
I feel bad that I don't think that we accomplished nearly as much as I hoped to. But we sure did the best that we could. It would have been better if we hadn't had treason from within that destroyed the documentary, because then we would have had a documentary come out. I had Skirt Go Spinny and Sundar were both going to work on the documentary and help with that. And that never happened because one of the key people that literally entrenched himself in every integral part of it denied permission to use their video or their voice. And I was so broken afterwards, I just didn't even try. At some point, I may take all of those video files and hand them off to somebody and say, do what you will, because it was all recorded. Talk about living your life under a microscope. It was all recorded. And I'm glad it was, because at some point it'll come out. But yeah, I appreciate all of y'all. And I appreciate all of the women that are able to still be out there doing the work, and the new women that have joined in, like, what's her name? Riley Gaines. She wasn't out there when I was, but when she hit the road loud, and she had got a lot of media, and that helped. I may not agree with everything. That's the other thing, is we need to understand that when we're fighting a war on reality, we're not going to agree on everything, because we're different people. We come from completely different backgrounds. There's no way anybody's ever going to agree about everything. And so whenever I see TERFs arguing amongst themselves about other issues, it's like, just shut up, agree to disagree about that issue, and get back to work. Keep your focus. That was what I tried to do when we were on the ride, was keep our focus on the issues. Some of the interviews we did, the interviews are still out there. Lesbian Newsflash did an interview. It wasn't real good because I was sitting on the sidewalk talking into my phone and couldn't hear very well. But it's out there and it wasn't bad. one of the ones I regret people not hearing the most was American Conversation. It was a podcast, and I did that in Chicago, and one of them acted like devil's advocate, and it was just really good. The whole thing. That was right before we found out that we weren't going to continue after Chicago, unfortunately. But I'm grateful for anybody that came to listen to this at all. I appreciate all of you that came to the room. I hope that it was enjoyable in some way. And I would say if you've never tried art, try it. And if what you try at first doesn't succeed, try again with every medium there is. Even if it's going out and just taking pictures. Photography is a form of art, people. And now your phone has become a really good camera. So it's pretty easy to do. There are so many different kinds of art. And if you can, even if you can't hold tone, sing. If there's nobody around, sing. Sing out loud. Sing out loud. Let that music feed your soul. Find music that really feeds your soul and belt that stuff out. Sing it out loud.
Sounds good. I think keep your focus. That's a really good piece of wisdom on all sorts of levels. And I know that you were a bit nervous about tonight, you said to start with, but you should be proud of yourself. It's an amazing life. And thank you for taking us through a little bit of it. Really, it's just been such a great time, Skylar. Thank you.
I hope it worked out okay. Oh, and also cooking is a form of art. Cooking is fun.
Well, yeah, that takes us back to Peja, the cook herself.
My garden feeds my art, which feeds my kitchen, which feeds my garden. It's a lovely trifecta of pushing me to have, I call it now, the little hamster on a wheel in my brain that now wears a little beret and has a paintbrush in her mouth.
I love that so much. Am I done?
Yeah, we just had a couple more things to do.
You're off the hook now, Skylar.
All right, I'm going to shut up now. Thank you very much. I love you all, and I actually don't just say that. I literally do. I literally do love you all.
Well, don't go heading out. Stick around because we don't want you to leave just yet. So hold on.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to turn it back over to Hazel Moon.
The next woman that we have got coming to Storyteller is one of what I call my authors. So in doing the audiobook narration, I come across some incredible authors. And this woman, Nina Rose, she wrote a short story called Fragments of Silence. And in a way, it's a bit like that painting you were talking about, Skylar, of the broken pieces of mirror. And it relates to her own fractured childhood and then young adulthood. It's a short story, which is going to be the basis towards a memoir of her life. And she's going to be coming to talk about that next in 2 weeks' time. Anything else you want to talk about, Peja?
Yes, I want to. I think you had another announcement you wanted to share with the audience today, didn't you?
Oh, yes. I have my other announcement. Something I've had to have been very quiet about for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I'm not very good at being quiet and keeping secrets, I have to tell you. But yes, I'm just really, really pleased to be able to tell everybody finally today that I have been chosen as the voice of Turf Island. It's my latest audiobook. It's by Fiona McAnena of Sex Matters. And we've both been able to announce it today. We are really, really hoping, fingers crossed, that it is out on Monday. The way that Audible does it, it's quite annoying because they don't tell you when it's going to go live. You just get a notification email. Oh, your book is live. So yeah, we're hoping that it's coming out on Monday. It's our history. It's our turf history. It's full of the women and the campaigns that you know really well, but with plenty of extra details of the background. And also they're looking back. So it's with a bit of hindsight. You're going to love to know it. You're going to love to know all the details. It's over 9 hours. You got to get it.
Thank you. Yes. Please remember, if you're going to go buy Turf Island, the book, leave a review. We need to, anytime a woman is announcing that she is doing something in that medium, whether it's narration or the book, we need to always have in our minds, I need to tell at least a few other women and tell them as well to leave a review, because this is how we get our authors and our narrators to the top of the list. So leave a review. And we're really excited, and I'm over the moon for you. Absolutely. So now I'm going to turn it over to Nat. If you're not familiar with the woman behind the Scarlet Curtain, Nat is our founder of the Red Tent, and she's going to announce something new.
Well, you're making me blush, Paige. Jesus, co-founder, first of all, I can't take all the credit for the Red Tent Collective. It is a collective for a reason, and I'm here today to introduce you all to Turf Pack. Now, for those of you that don't know what the Red Tent Collective does, in short, we bridge the technological gap in the fight in maintaining women and children's rights. Okay, and the way we do that is by building infrastructure and teaching how to use infrastructure. We do that two ways. Our members get to learn, and then lovely, lovely voices like Hazel Moons can reach out for a website and get a fully optimized for search engine website for a fraction of the cost of what it would typically cost. And we do that thanks to members like Carol, who has been one of our members since the beginning, has been financially supporting projects from Hazel Moon's website to us, putting a fundraiser together for Isabella Sepa in Brazil, who was able to seek asylum and pay for that through the funds that we raised through our technological infrastructure. It's the founding of the Women's Underground Theatre in Canada, which was able to raise over $2,000 for Reality-Based Women Unite conference held by Cosbar last year. And if you don't know, it's happening again this year, and I'll be emceeing. Hopefully I don't choke, because, it happens. Okay. It's how we launch a campaign against Nicholas Cepeda and the sponsors of the Orangeville Otters, and how we got a little bunch of them to drop, or how we made Amy Ham viral in 17 minutes. We do it through our memberships, and we do it through what we have to offer you in shop. And so I'm going to post it right now. Turf Pack.
I have a question. Can anybody see the emojis that I put up?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, good, because it's everybody else's emojis showed up, but mine didn't. And I thought, I don't want them to think I'm not paying attention.
I see you. Well, at least I know I can see you. And thank you. Because that is engagement, and we know what engagement does to the algorithms. We like it. All right, so I just dropped Turf Pack, which is a new design we brought into our store. Call it a line, if you would like. Turf Pack. And stay tuned, because we will be posting a cute little video about our Turf Pack. But you are getting the first preview of it. It's in our conversation, whether it's a flag, a t-shirt, a mug. When you purchase at the Red Tent, it's not just keeping our lights on, it's turning on the lights for Evidence-Based Social Work Alliance in the UK, who were shunned by their industry and needed a new home online where people could find them. That's what your financial support does when you're supporting the Red Tent Collective. So shameless plug. I'm still plugging it, but I'm doing it for a reason. Because technology is an adapt or die situation. And when you look at the grand scheme of things and the amount of money behind the lobbying for what we're fighting against, it's a David versus Goliath fight. And the only way we make that difference, and we've seen it over and over and over again, is when we hit technologically, whether it's with something viral, right? It could be this podcast that once, we download this little storyteller space is not just on X. It gets broadcast. I'm going to freak you out, Sky, maybe just a little bit. But when we upload this, it's going to hit Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, our website, our Discord channel. If you could see the spider web.
I'm glad I didn't know that earlier.
And so that's what we do. We build the digital footprints. We build the spider web that's needed so that when CBC Canada was calling Mohammed Al-Balouz, who murdered his wife and children, a she, the Red Tent Collective's blog articles were sitting right next to them in Google search for months. And we do that thanks to you. Voilà. So that is my spiel. That's me on my knees explaining why support for the Red Tent Collective is so important. And we hope that you enjoy the turf pack from our journal to our teas. I wish, Peach would turn her camera on and show her t-shirt off that she just got. Maybe we'll see it one day. One day. There's that beautiful picture of a ginger young man holding our cup. All of it helps, and it's financing that tech gap.
I want to make this like on a level for those of us who don't speak tech nerd. I am the biggest Luddite or hater of tech there is. The video that is dropping today, I did that. And I did that because of Nat. Because Nat had the patience to take me, who railed against anything tech, and it took a while, but she taught me. And now I can't stop. And I'm asking everyone, hey, you need me to make you something? So,
like, we've literally created a monster.
yes.
She's a Canva addict.
Yes.
And she's getting so good at it.
But so I just want, if you don't think you can do it, you can. And if you are a member of the tent, we have tiers where you get time every month with Nat, where you have access. We're always in there working. But I just want you to know, if I can do it, I call myself Nat's baseline when she's doing her stuff. I don't know what it's called.
She's my abacus.
Yes. She's taught me, and she's found a way to reach me about tech. And I think for women of a certain age, we're at the most disadvantage when it comes to tech. And we all know that the other side of our fight have been, the majority of them have no tech inside and out. So I just wanted to add that. I'm really proud of this video. I don't brag on myself, but I'm gonna brag. I'm really proud of it because I had every one of you in mind when this idea came about. The flag represents all of us. It represents the United States suffragette flag. It represents the UK. It represents everyone. We were tired of us not being unified on our flag. And so we said, you know what? We're going to make it. So all four, that's why you have the four colors there. That's to represent the suffragette, or the new and suffragette 2.0. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you need a table runner? Napkins? We've got a whole suffragette set.
She loves the table runner. But thanks you to everyone who joined us today. And yeah, and if you can't purchase something, or you can't donate, or you can't be a member or whatever, just repost us. That's free, right? Tell someone, if you know a woman who is an amazing artist, or whatever her field is, and you think that she needs to be heard from, go have her sign up to be on Storytellers. Every woman is welcome on Storytellers. You just have to let us know, right? Or Hazel Moon and I will go, hey, we would very much like you to be on Storytellers. That does happen as well. So, but just just pass on this space, pass on any, because, and remember, we're putting out, if you have something you want to write, we want to hear what you have to say. We don't care what the topic is. If you want to strip your floors of varnish and you made a video and you want to show women how to do it, then we'll put it up for you. If you want to teach women astronomy, how to use a telescope, whatever. If you want to talk about the fight, if you don't want to talk about the fight, the whole point of the red tent is that every woman can say, have her opinion and talk about what she wants to talk about. So please support us. Please support Hazel Moon. Remember, Turf Island, leave a review. Also, leave a review for the Audible. Skylar, you are amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. More, we have a net, and don't worry, season 3 is coming, and we've already got 6 amazing women. So
I was really worried that probably bored people, but I really
no,
hope that it was okay.
it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And please, please don't forget, because we want, in the spaces, the storytellers from series 2 will be going up after our space that is coming up next. We'll get this season's out for everyone on the Scarlet Frequency. Subscribe to us on YouTube, the Scarlet Frequency, as well. And let's get at it, ladies.
Is that how you're on Spotify, the Scarlet Frequency?
The Scarlet Frequency. Yes, ma'am.
That's why I couldn't find you. Okay, because I looked for you. I'm on Spotify. That's what my playlist is on.
Yeah, the Red Tent Collective is on Spotify and has a podcast called The Scarlet Frequency. Yum, num, 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 num.
Well, thank you
I
again
will
to
subscribe.
Skylar for joining us today. My fabulous co-host, Hazel Moon Audio. We're all super excited. Congratulations again on Turf Island. It was amazing. Nat, thank you for coming up and doing your zhuzh with the 0011 stuff. And everyone have a wonderful day. I'm going to let my co-host Hazel Moon take us out. And everyone, thanks again for supporting us. Thank you for supporting Skylar by being here. And remember, if you have something you want to tell us, that's what we're here for.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks for supporting storytellers. As Peter always says, every woman has got a story. Remember, it's always interesting. It might not feel like it is to you, but we love to know about women's lives. Take care, everybody. Good night.